Good evening, everyone. This is Enrique Sanchez, director of founder and director of Spanish United. Tonight we have a very special guest. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself of the audience, please?
My name is Dr. Mariam Saada. I am a philologist, a linguist, and I research the connection between Latino or Hispanic culture and Arabic or Islamic roots or past or history.
Welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be.
Likewise. I attended recently your lecture. I believe it was a week and a half ago that had to do with Latino-Islamic connections, and I wanted to say that I really commend what you're doing because in the United States, Hispanics tend to be invisible in a lot of things, and we're not really seen in many aspects of history. But not too many people know that within the Hispanic Muslim world, there's been a connection even before even before the Spanish colonization in the Middle Ages. So we would like to ask you a little bit about what made you get motivated to investigate the history of the Hispanic Muslim connection in the New World.
I think it was not something that suspected that it exists. Um, I have I have known about the connection in Spain, and I have studied that connection in Spain. I'm not surprised that it crossed over the Atlantic and it became part of New Spain. And maybe we can define New Spain for the audience, which is, South US, current Mexico, Guatemala,
Caribbean,
like Caribbean, and the Philippines, all the way to the Philippines. This entire region was called the New Spain. So I think what I did not expect is that this was an outlet for them. I didn't think that this would be because again, what was the narrative was that they were not they lost in the political arena, they lost in the battlefield, so therefore they're no longer part of the story. Like it's this big silence in history, like what happened to them. And so um you're told the story of the Inquisition, so then you sit there with the idea that, oh, okay, then they were just, either tortured or forced out or just migrated or something happened.
mhm,
But you don't consider part of migration or diaspora, if you wish, that you're going to find them in the New World.
mhm.
And then you ask the question, because also I think one of the biggest questions for me as a Muslim researcher was, um, if they were Muslims and they were persecuted in Spain, it would make sense that they would go and migrate to, Morocco or Algeria, and where they're accepted as Muslims and not have specific, any religious intolerance,
Right,
exercised.
of course.
So you would think that this would be the normal default, but then you also find texts that show you that that wasn't that it wasn't so simple and it wasn't that easy. And maybe that's why they actually considered. So the motives and the reasons are still to be explored further. But definitely, I think the research came onto me. I did not uh, per se know that this would be my route. I presented my research in Mexico City in 2014, and then I was very surprised that in academia over there they had this idea that, hey, come and explore the documents we have, and we have interesting things for you to come and look at on this side of the world. And that's how it all began.
Well, amazing because usually when people when in the New World, when people think about hidden people, they usually think about Jews because usually the ones that came that were non-Catholic were Jews. I myself am a descendant of Sephardic Jews that migrated here long time ago. My ancestors settled in Puerto Rico and Guatemala, but I never really heard anything about crypto Muslims or crypto Islam. Especially here in the Americas, because we tend to assume that Islam in the New World tends to be like a new phenomenon, like in the last century or so.
The idea of like migration, like Muslims migrating to the Americas, there's there's two places in history that people see that form of migration, either the contemporary 20th century migration
Correct.
or some earlier migration with like slave trade, that kind of thing. Maybe, you know, West African
Hmm.
Muslim brought to the Americas and they happen to be of Muslim descent, that kind of that. So those would be the two places that you would see that. But you are absolutely right that we do find the crypto Jewish story a lot more um, uh, understood and studied. And I think it's due to several things. Number one, that some makers and shakers were caught, who were, you know, of crypto Jewish background, were caught, and it caused, there was like money like coming into the story, as in like, wait a minute, is the Carvajal family a crypto Jewish family? And then, you know, the Carvajal had like in Monterrey, Mexico, had like this um, strong economic presence. So that was like, what does that mean in terms of the economy? What does that mean in terms of society? So it's just these certain, so to speak, individuals that caught a lot of attention. And then a lot of research was was a lot of research and a lot of writings and publications on the topic. So there's a lot more understanding, I think, of the crypto Judaism. And I also think the crypto Judaism, uh, if I may say, it was earlier. So the Jews were longer in Sepharad and in Spain.
Hmm.
So prior to Muslims, the Jews were there, and then they had their own story of how they would, you know, episodes of sometimes they were allowed to be, and sometimes they had to go underground. So they already had that story of crypto Judaism sort of prior to the 8th century. And
Hmm.
then with the 8th century, there was like, oh, then there's this convivencia or coexistence, and maybe people can live side by side and work together and share an economy and share knowledge and, you know, education and the entire, you know, coexistence. And, you know, at some point, Cordoba and Spain became like the model for how this coexistence and cohabitation and
Yes, correct.
don't like to use the word tolerance, because I feel like when you use the word tolerance, um, it has a negative connotation. So if I tolerate you means I don't like you, but I will let you be who you are. And I think it was not that kind of existence at that time. I think it
Hmm.
was more like, you are different, you be you, I be me, and then let's just find the common grounds and build together
Yeah,
something.
there's a difference between tolerance and coexist. Called tolerance means, like you said, I don't like you, but we let you be. But coexistence means that we work together, even though we have our differences.
Exactly. So I think this idea of finding the common, building bridges and common grounds and dialoguing in topics like religion. So it's very wild that they had this open communication where they could debate religious discourse and say, hey, how do you guys interpret this thing in Christianity or in Judaism or in Islam? And then have this open discussion where everybody had the freedom to be and say and express the differences with all respect. And I think that's very interesting how in Spain it influenced Judaism itself. Like a lot of ideology in, like a lot of writing in Judaism that came out of Spain was so mature and so well stitched together because of this constant exchange with no fear. Because look, if people were so comfortable sharing even faith, not just sharing, okay, we're going to build together a society or an economic system or, you know, business or moving things to like the day-to-day operation, but also let's get to what do you believe in, what I believe in, and do
Hmm.
I have enough knowledge in who I am that I can share who I am and not feel a threat? Like, because here it is. It's, I feel like in moments when people weren't sure of themselves, that's so easy to just, you know, do this to the other and say, I'm so worried about what you're saying because it's threatening what I believe. So how about we don't have a conversation?
Right.
And I think if people are so well, like knowledgeable and understanding of who they are, it opens up a lot of, it makes them a lot more I don't want to say the word vulnerable, but you can open up and be you and share and know that you're going to be safe and respected and not put down because of what you
Right,
do. You know
right.
what I mean?
And I do agree with you. And I know that Spain was one of the few countries in Europe where the three religions coexisted, while the rest of Europe was still living in the dark eras. They were still under a feudal society. Spain was actually pretty advanced during its time. And you actually brought up an interesting point because one of the things that we do in Spanish United, we are a civil rights organization that started 4 years ago. And one of the things, our purpose is to educate people on the Hispanic experience because as you know, many people tend to see Hispanics still as being recent immigrants, as foreigners, while we have a 500-year history in the United States. And one of the things that we emphasize, our motto is culture over color. Like Hispanics come in all colors. We're not a race, we're an ethnicity. We have different beliefs and whatnot. And you know, and it's a good thing to embrace those diversities. Like Hispanics are one of the most diverse people in the world. Many people don't realize that. And I feel that it's very important that Hispanics are able to educate non-Hispanics about who we are as a people to dispel any stigma. And that's what we do. We try to educate non-Hispanics about the Hispanic experience and to dispel any stereotypes that people may have about Hispanics as a group.
I love what you're saying because it goes very much in line with my research because on your side you're looking at like the ethnic racial part, which is like the big melting pot and the coming together of different people from around either indigenous connection, African connection,
European
even
connection,
European connection.
Asian.
Exactly, Asian with the Phil. Exactly. I want to share. I want to share my. Take the chance to share my book, and I would say the religious diversity. Okay, so this is taking this into consideration. Is that the openness about sharing beliefs and share, and it's not a monolithic Catholic experience or voice that just that narrates the entire story. Yeah, there's a lot more diversity. And this coexistence opened up the dialogue for everyone to exchange and be. So what I'm trying to say here is religiously, everyone knew everybody. They were
Hmm.
neighbors, they were together, they built together a civilization. So it's not like they were like, oh, I don't know you and I'm going to eliminate you. Because if you look at the process of elimination of the other or creation of the other, you have to not know who they are. So I don't know who you are. So I'm going to start saying I'm going to make statements like this all, are, Okay. So I'm going to start making all these general statements. And because of these general statements, then I'm going to go take it to the next level. Well, I can't trust, that category is not trustable. So if it's like you can't trust this category, then here comes the fear. Oh, well, if I can't trust that I'm scared of this category in society is actually scary. So what do we do with a scary category? Then we create a narrative about, maybe we should isolate the category. Yes, it's a good concept. What about eliminate the category? Oh, you know what? There's no trust. Then yeah, we can lead up to elimination. And then going from I know you and I know your face and you're my neighbor and you're my friend to I have no feelings of eliminating you. Like I don't feel bad. I have no
Hmm.
remorse. I have no guilt. I'm okay with it. As a matter of fact, I feel good about it.
Hmm.
You see, taking it to from this to we are together building a civilization to I'm not just okay with elimination, I'm celebrating elimination.
Hmm.
And that's really like, that was mind boggling for me. How do you go from this to that? Because they shared neighborhoods. If you go today in Spain, you find the Moreria, the Juderia, the Cristiandad. They're right
Hmm.
next to each other. They're walking distance from each other. Like it's not like the Moreria is like in some kind of random spot and then Juderia is another spot. They were together.
Hmm.
So they built city together. They knew each other's holidays, they knew each other's rituals, they knew each other's ceremonies for death, for birth, for this, for that. How do you, there was courtesy, like,
And
someone died.
in many cases there were intermarriage between the three groups.
And they're, thank you, bingo. So they were like this, and yet we want to think of it as they kind of sort of didn't know who the other group is, and then just going to the layer of elimination, it's not an overnight business. It takes a long time to get there. And
Right.
so for you to just look at elimination and say that's they only met each other in the elimination phase,
Mm.
that's inaccurate, because for you to get there, there has to be several stages of building up to it,
Right.
centuries of work up here, so that there's no guilt down there.
Right. I would say the Spanish crown, the reason why they did the Reconquista primarily because they wanted to unite the empire. And they felt that by uniting the empire, they had to get rid of certain groups of people that they didn't see as Spanish. Like when it comes to any type of war or genocide that may happen throughout history, there's always a political factor based on it. And I feel that the Reconquista was more of a political conquest than it was a racial or religious conquest. At least that's from what I see as an observer.
Political and economic.
Hmm.
You got to put the two together.
Hmm.
It's the economic interest with the political to get like these two tied up together under the religious uh el manto, under the
Hmm.
religious robe.
Mantle.
Yeah. So basically you give it a religious, it's because look, it's so much easier to motivate religiously than it is to say the truth about the politics and the economics. You're not going to say, I don't want to be, there's loans taken from the Jews and to complete this Operation Reconquista. We don't want to pay off the loans. It's easier to expel them out of Spain than to pay off the debt.
Hmm.
You don't want to say that. You'd rather say something like religiously, it's a good cause. And, we don't feel guilty and we don't feel bad about confiscating people's assets. And are you with me?
Right.
So
I am.
religion, I think originally I wanted to see it from a religious perspective. And then I realized that if you take away the religious perspective and look at it factually, politically, and economically, then you understand a lot of the engines motivating, certain things in specific time periods. But I think one of the hardest things I had to negotiate to myself was, how do we go from being the model of convivencia and coexistence and all of this to extreme, I gotta eliminate the other, and there's one way, one view, everything is just this one, and to the point of even the racially coming to say limpieza de sangre, coming up
Hmm.
with a certificate where your blood is clean. How do you prove that? How do you prove that you don't have any tainted, Jewish or Muslim blood in you? Like, how do you prove that? And the engine is definitely an economic engine. You
Right.
buy
At that
certificate.
time, at that time, they didn't have
No,
DNA testing.
exactly. There's no DNA testing. So how do you? So I just feel like sometimes, you know, working around, um, I don't like to say it this way, like decolonizing white male Christian eyes that gave us the story, decolonizing that. And I don't want to sound like I have an issue with white male Christian
Hmm.
view. I'm okay with it so long as you don't go labeling everybody else with this lens, like
Hmm.
it's an okay lens so long as it's not just eliminating everyone else from the discourse, if you know
Hmm.
what I mean. So
Right,
it's
of
just,
course.
if that's the lens that's going to marginalize this is it, and then everything else is the other, I have a problem with the creation of the other,
Hmm.
because the creation of the other is the route to elimination.
Oh, I agree with you, and that's one of the things that I'm seeing today that Hispanic people unfortunately are being seen as the other, and it's very important to combat against it because when society starts seeing that it, like you were saying earlier, that it's okay to mistreat the other as not being part of the country, it could create further problems along the way. And I've said it very clearly. Hispanic people in the United States need to start raising their income levels because I theorized that if Hispanics are not able to assimilate and prosper within a generation, we might see similar problems that we're seeing in Europe with immigrants. So I always talk in many of my discourses that Hispanic people need to educate themselves. They need to reinvest in their communities and to give back because I feel that economically, the only way you could preserve one's history is making sure that there is a generation to follow afterwards once we pass from this earth. And I feel that education is the only way that Hispanics are able to prosper. Like we're seen as peons, as people that we just are disposable workers, but we need to evolve from that. Like there's no sin or anything wrong in doing a humble job, but that is not something that you pass on to your children and grandchildren, something you do temporarily. And one of the workshops that we do is to educate Hispanics that, hey, there's no shame in working a humble job, but you need to look at a bigger future because I see that other immigrant groups that have been here for less time are able to prosper within one generation, while Hispanics have been here for 100 generations and we're still living like we did 100, 200 years ago. So there's something that we need to change. So I feel that it's very important that the more Hispanics educate themselves and also expose themselves to different ideas, I feel it's very important Hispanics learn to open up to different cultures because I think they could able to pick up the positive things that would help them to become better people. The whole point is to get Hispanics not to be insular, but to be inclusive of everyone else when it comes to ideas.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I'm a teacher and uh you know my students are predominantly Hispanics and African Americans. So I basically, with my Latino population, Hispanic population, I like to work with them on the concept of the American dream. And I ask them the question, what does your American dream look like? And and I show them precisely incomes in the United States, and I project on the screen. I shock them. I think that lesson changes their life when we look at income of the United States income and racially kind of put it
Hmm.
into
Correct.
black bracket. And then I ask the questions of are we here and not here or there, right?
Hmm.
And then I bring a box to class and I carry the box and I ask them what are the Hispanics allowed to excel in? What are the areas because you're put in a box,
Right, of course.
which box are you allowed to succeed in? And I make them think about it. And then we came up as a class with the idea that the two boxes that you're allowed to be in is art
Hmm.
and sports. So if you're a famous athletic Hispanic, that box fits you. And if you are a famous artist, a singer, a dancer, an actor,
Right,
actress, then you're allowed. Every other box is not your box.
right.
So then you default into this other. And how many people in that community get to be that box?
Mm.
That percentage. What are the likelihood that these are going to be your two areas excel and sort of like make it or become or
Mm.
you know climb up that
Right,
level.
right.
So
The
we discussed this economically, and then we realized there's certain things, certain places that were not put on as a possibility, such as doctors and
mhm.
architects, so we change the story to kind of view if you can envision yourself in those positions or even jobs that are not part of your community, like exploring other careers, explore other
Mm.
options. Or are we, because I'm not this famous singer and I'm not this incredible athlete, therefore I am nothing? Like, are
Right,
we, or therefore I just have to go down to, manual labor, or like
right,
where I place myself in this structure?
right. Yeah, Hispanics need to think more of themselves, and that's one of the. I'm also a teacher myself. I also educate a lot of Hispanic people that do the workshops about thinking about what they can be and what they can do. Like you were saying, many Hispanic think that their only purpose in life is to either, and I have to say this third box is like you said, either to be an athlete, to be a entertainer, and sadly, drug dealer or gang. Because
Oh,
that's the third that's the another career that unfortunately many Hispanics think that
uh-huh.
they have to do in order to achieve a better quality of life.
I was discussing the legal routes.
No, no, but it is
Answer.
a fact
But you
because
are right. You are right. But that's a box. That's a box that's like uh created out of it's like a demand and supply box. That's a different kind of box.
of course,
If
but
there was no demand, there would be no supply kind
of
of thing.
course,
So
but unfortunately that these are factors that, as Hispanics we need to talk about because it's like
yes.
many Hispanics, even though many of them are choosing education, many of them don't want to choose an education because they feel that they want to get easy money. And one of the reasons why many Hispanics out of all ethnicities are more prone to join gangs primarily is because they feel that they have no other way of creating an income. And from what I see, and I'm also a sociologist by what do you call that? Not by profession, but by study. That's the perfect word. Is that after African Americans, Hispanics are the second largest incarcerated group in the United States, and that's kind of sad because when you have that mass of Hispanics that are massively incarcerated, it breaks up the family, it breaks up the culture, and it just creates a lot of also economic problems as well. Like I was having a discussion with one of my directors last week about economics, and I said that Hispanics need to learn to stop consuming alcohol because when Hispanics consume alcohol, they're transferring their wealth from one group of people to another, while other groups of people are able to send their kids to college. We are sending our kids to an early grave. So we need to change how we invest our money because when we invest our money on things that we don't need, there are consequences around from ramifications from it. So we need to reinvest on how we put our money and how to preserve our culture like other people do, that are recent immigrants from other places.
I want to say that for it's important to look at history and see that the struggles of colonizations or colonial work, it's, it has affected even the spending habits and all and many things when it comes to Latinos or African Americans. And I think it has to do with the fact that uh, there were social problems
Hmm.
and certain solutions like alcohol were escapes to certain problems. And instead of addressing issues, I think there remains to be this those tools that were, if you wish, I don't like to look at it this way, but if the father is alcoholic, then the
Hmm.
son is alcoholic, then the grandson, it's like these lines that you need to break. It's kind of family chain.
Hmm.
And it looks like more a constellation kind of work where you want to break up chains from previous generations
Hmm.
and looking at the root cause of how you can modify current behavior based on, so looking at history, analyzing it, and seeing where the interpretation of um, contemporary or current behaviors that you're trying to change. So when you're trying to
Hmm.
change behavior, you got to understand the history and you got to tackle the root cause of it. So yes, you are right about the spending habits. 100% correct about the population in jail. And the biggest questions are why are they majority is, Latino or African American,
Hmm.
why? And then do we tie it to the income? Do we tie it to social problems? Do we tie it to history? Do we tie it to low education? Like what part of it is contributing to what?
Mm.
And I, looking at it from um, empowering communities is is crucial, and the
Mm.
work up here, decolonizing up here, because if there is a underlying racial issue of you're non-white, i.e., you are down here and your job is to be this third, the
The
if I may
disposable
say,
worker.
thank you so much. And your life is less valuable, your, you know, contribution is less valuable, you know, that kind of thing. Is everybody on equal playing field is the
Yes,
question.
correct.
And
Absolutely.
if the answer is a no, because the not because I say it's a no. It's a no because of the jail population, and it's a no because of the education population. It's a no because of many things. So if the premise has to be everyone on equal playing field, so that really the life of a human is equal to another human, and not be, okay, this one is a disposable and it's not important, it's not going to make it to the media or the news, and this one is going to be all news on it because that is a more valuable life. And I think this is double standards in these issues definitely have a lot to do with, we still need to do some decolonial work. And I like your approach because you're addressing the actual Hispanic population
Mm.
rather than, because that's where the change is going to come
Correct.
from. It's not going to come from anywhere else unless I am aware of how I'm being used. And when I say I, I'm saying I'm a Hispanic here in this case.
Right.
As a Hispanic, as a Hispanic heart person,
Mm.
my heart is, unless I know exactly how I'm being used in this game and what my contribution is and what my box is and what am I allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do. Therefore, if drug dealing is the route for me to kind of quick money, easy, like you said, easy money, turn around and
Right.
make it, then who's to hold me from that option? Like, why am I gonna consider the hard route of going to apply for a job with my name Velasquez and getting rejected because that name doesn't fit the box that I'm applying for? You know, I'm
Mm.
going to apply as a, I don't know, I'm looking for a prestigious position, but my last name doesn't sound right.
Mm.
How am I gonna, how is this against me? Like, where am I qualified? Am I looked at as an equal person with
Mm.
my qualification? Is my resume enough? Is my qualification enough?
Mm.
And so I think change happens from awareness, then definitely focus on education. And thank you for doing the work that you do. I respect you so much for like taking on the torch, the education
Thank
torch
you.
to, that's very admirable. And I think from that point to the transformation that you're looking for is really understanding the contribution.
Yeah, my goal is to eventually to see Hispanic people prosper and to change the cycle from when they are in, because again, I feel that if those chains are not broken, soon, within a couple of decades, there might be social unrest between a large uneducated Hispanic plurality. So that's something that I want to avoid happening.
I want to say that having Spanish per se is not a problem. Like, so in LA, we're here in LA, and there's a lot
Mm.
of people who are like monolingual Spanish and they survive and they can live and walk around and, you know, live a day to day without needing English. But
Mm.
so it's not a language thing. I think it's definitely, it's not about the language. It's not about the way the integration, the way the Hispanics are integrated in society. I think they're very well integrated. I think it's about the where I see myself positioned.
Mm.
Do and really defining this American dream. What is that American dream? Is the American dream just to be here and just work and economically just create some dollars that either I'm going to ship to my home country to build a house or help my family somewhere else, or just be a consumer over here? Is this, I'm going to, and when I say consumer is day to day consumption, and
Right,
also
basic
mind you,
basic necessities.
basic necessity, but also you have to put into consideration that this is the one of the hardest working population. So the amount of work put into this, the capital generated is horrendous, horrendous. But then how is it dissipated is a good question. How are the funds dissipated? What are the tools set in place to make sure that you keep generating all these funds, but in the end you're exactly at square one and exactly where you're at. You don't move
Right,
forward. You don't,
right. And that
advance.
and that's the thing. Hispanics have a large purchasing power, but yet they are reaping the least of the benefits, while other people that might not generate as much income, or they may generate more income, they're reaping the maximum benefits. So that's one of the things that we're trying to say, trying to change. Anyway, Professor, we're almost out of time. I want to tell you thank you so much for being on the show. I really do appreciate you taking your time on being on Spanish United Radio. And for your audience, we are located on all social media platforms. We are on Spanish United YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, now known as X. Anyone that wants to make a donation, we are 503 nonprofit. Anything that you donate goes to help anyone in the community. And as soon as I'm finished, I will email you and send you the link. And I also texted you my address for the book.
Enrique, thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciated chatting with you in this podcast.
It's my pleasure. Have yourself a good evening, Professor.
Thank you so much,
Bye bye.
Enrique. Thank you.